Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth, alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
I'm scared, Andy!
Okay. And it's Tuesday, and what we do, not every Tuesday, but occasionally on Tuesdays, is I give Phil homework. And
For the record, this is the second Tuesday we've done this. So let's...
yes, but when we are archived in the Library of Congress, I want people to be able to sort of look at our body of work holistically, right?
Touche.
When they go to the Library of Congress on the national holiday that is one of our birthdays, right?
Second breakfast day.
Indeed. SBD!
By the way, just for the record, between the two of us, it's gonna be my birthday because your birthday is already Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
That's totally fair. That is
So,
totally fair.
They're not
That's
gonna
fair.
change that, but July 17th is nothing.
Nothing.
It's the day Disneyland opened, July 17th, 1955. It's also Phyllis Diller's birthday,
Nice.
David Hasselhoff's birthday.
Nice. I think I have Muhammad Ali as well, which is awesome.
You have Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali. I have Phyllis Diller, David Hasselhoff. But I do have, wait
Tell
for
me.
it, Jimmy Cagney.
Top of the world, Ma.
Top of the world. Still not Muhammad Ali and MLK Jr., but maybe Muhammad Ali, but not MLK.
You know what? You know what we both have? Each other's half birthday.
Oh, I know we do. Oh my gosh, you're right. So weird.
So, wah, wah. So yes, so we're starting something. We're revving up a new feature here at Second Breakfast, where always Coca-Cola, where Phil is sadly deficient in his viewing of horror movies, and that is because he doesn't like horror movies.
That's right.
And because
Can I say a couple things already?
please.
You could have just said Phil is sadly deficient, period. And then everybody would have been like, yep, that's right. That's true. That's accurate. Okay, so anyways, go ahead.
And because I am his friend and I love him, and because I'm his friend and I want to mess with his head, I want to deepen his experience with and knowledge of horror movies. And the first movie that I had him watch was
The Omen.
The Omen. And
This is part two in our horror film education because I watched Evil Dead last week. And I have seen some horror movies. In fact, Andy was giving me a list before that we started filming of like, have you seen this? And I think I'd seen more than you expected. I think I have seen.
I think that's true.
But I don't fancy myself a horror movie. I don't go look. I haven't been going looking for them. Until recently, something has been sort of pulling me in that direction, and I think a big part of it is you. I'd also like to point out, folks, Andy was like, here's the reason why. You'll notice if you are a fan of our show, which you should be, that one thing that happens when we do this is that oftentimes we're talking, and I'll say something, and Andy will stop and say, you are the worst person I know. And he says it so often and with such ease that you'd think that there's no consequences and it's just this hyperbolic thing that Andy says, but every time he says it, he then thinks to himself secretly, and I am going to show you a movie that will give you nightmares. So he's been building up. Yeah.
He's on to me.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, listen, in for a penny, in for a pound, okay? Like,
Right.
This is the business we've chosen, and let's do this, but I believe you're going to crush my soul, and you started it with The Omen. Before we get into The Omen, something I want to say.
Please.
So I have two older brothers, and I have not talked to one of them about this project, but I have talked to the other one, and I texted him one day last week. They're older than me. One's 6 years older and one's 9 years older, so they've been around the world a little bit longer, and I just assumed that they both would be more fluent in horror movies than I have been, because I just assumed that between the three of us, I'm the wuss.
Sure.
So I texted my oldest brother and said, send me a list of horror movies I should see.
Okay.
He called me like 10 minutes later and was like, indignant. He goes, why do you think indignant. Why would I have a list of horror movies for you to see? And I was like, I explained what I just said to you. I don't know. You're older than me. You were a teenager in the '80s when all these famous movies were coming out. I figured you've seen things that I haven't seen because he's the one who was like, you should see Bad Boys, the original, the not the Michael Bay movie, but
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
with
Sean
Sean
Penn,
Penn,
Esai Morales.
Esai
Yeah,
Morales,
yeah,
Clancy Brown,
yeah.
Clancy
Indeed.
Brown. I'm gonna get him on this show someday. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Totally.
Uh, um, I want him to be our first celebrity guest.
Nice.
Uh,
He's
him or
great
I.
in John Dies at the End, by the way. Great in
Okay,
John
okay.
Dies at the End.
He's great at everything. He's great. Him and Alfred Molina, man. Okay, so anyways,
Excellent pair.
uh, um, I was like, he gave me River's Edge, which you should see. Have you seen River's Edge?
I actually don't think I have.
If anyone ever says like the '80s are movies filled with fluff, just hand them Bad Boys and River's Edge and be like, I'll be on my way. Call me when your brain like recovers. So
Indeed.
anyways,
Okay.
so he
Okay.
was like indignant though. He's like, why do you think? I was like, so I don't know. I mean, you're older than me. I figured I'm a wuss. And he goes, Phil, I don't watch horror movies. I've never watched horror. And then it hit me. The reason I don't watch horror movies is my family doesn't watch horror movies. Like, we didn't do that. And he was just like, look, man, I don't need that stuff in my head. Like, I just don't need it. And he's not, again, I'm the most religious person in my family. So, like, it's not like I have this family of prude people. But this was just a genre that no one in my family ever got into. Now, I
Sure.
still haven't checked with my middle brother, and I look forward to having that conversation with him because if any of us, when I think about it, have seen stuff or would say you should see this, I think it would be him, and he's definitely the most courageous of us,
Okay.
without question.
Okay.
So I'd be interested to see what he says. But by and large, we didn't watch them. But my brother was telling me the story about how I think he and my dad were watching The Exorcist or something like that, or it might have been no, it was Poltergeist.
Okay.
And the little girl gets like pulled away or whatever, you know?
Yep.
And apparently my dad was like angry. Like got angry, not scared, angry. And my brother was like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, that's just no. No." And my brother was like, "What?" He's like, "I just wouldn't let that happen."
Nice.
And my brother was like, "What?" He's, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I just wouldn't let that happen. That's not." And my brother's like, "What do you mean you wouldn't let it happen? There's ghosts." He's like, "Yeah, forget it. I'd go after them. I'd get those." And he was dead serious. He's like, "I would go get my daughter and get her back." And then he was like, "I wouldn't let any ghosts get in the way of things." He was just so like dismissive of evil powers in any way,
Awesome.
stopping him from like saving his child. He was like,
Well, A,
he was
awesome.
pissed about it.
A, awesome. And B, that's actually what ends up happening in Poltergeist.
Yeah, although I mean, Craig Nelson never gets full on just like my dad had this attitude of like I wouldn't have let it get that far in the first place.
Fair.
Like
That's
sort of
fair.
like just indignant about the whole possibility of,
Yeah.
of like come on, you know. And I think that may actually speak volumes as to why I did not grow up on horror movies as well.
Sure.
It's because my dad just wasn't having any of that.
I grew up all over horror movies. I mean, my dad loves them, and I watched a ton of them. A ton of them.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I agree with that.
So, anyways, I just wanted to tell that was a little insight into as we talk about this. It's not just about the Omen; it's about trying to figure out why I haven't watched them, and I think that was a big piece of the puzzle for me.
Sure. I chose the Omen for a couple of reasons. One, it includes a lot of things I know that you particularly find unnerving and scary. It's dealing with the devil and the occult and spiritual warfare.
I did not like that.
Sure. And the other thing, the other reason that I set this as your first assignment, if you will, is you don't usually find actors of the caliber of, honestly, most of this cast. Gregory Peck,
what a cast!
right? Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner, just it's an unbelievable cast. And so that was like, if you could, watch the movie from any sort of objective way, from between your fingers, like I knew that if nothing else, you would enjoy the performances in this movie.
Yeah.
And so that's where I want Okay, so here's the plot of the movie. A diplomat and his wife, um, they
They live in
their
England.
son might be the Antichrist.
Oh man. So
That's really
here's the
it.
deal. It turns okay. This woman miscarries. Well, she has a baby, and the baby dies in delivery, but she doesn't know. And at the
Right.
same time that happens, there's another baby born, another baby boy born, same hospital, same time, and his mom dies apparently, as we are told. And so the
Yes.
priest convinces the dad, "Don't tell your wife that the baby's died. Just take this other baby. It's
This
what
other
God
baby.
would want. It's a
Yes.
blessing." Okay. Um, maybe I'm a big dirty liberal feminist. Let's
Okay.
be let's be honest. I'm not. But I would never go in for that
Right.
at all. So
Right.
one thing I understand about horror movies already, at least from jokes about them and everything, is you know, people do stupid things. Like, for instance, if someone's chasing you and then you run up the stairs,
Right.
there's only
Right.
one way out, and you've just blocked it for yourself.
Indeed.
Idiot. You know,
Yeah.
don't go in that room. You're gonna go in that room. Like Evil Dead. I'm gonna walk down this cell. Oh. By the way, if anyone ever gets possessed in real life, and they're like talking like, and then they just stop and are like, "What? I'm normal again." Don't believe them
No. No.
ever.
No.
So if someone's like, "I know your wife's child died in childbirth, but she doesn't know it, and there's this other person you've never seen who died," just take their child and don't tell your wife. No.
Say no.
Now here's the deal. You could say to me, "Phil, it was a priest, and they offered this really big like reason to do it as a priest, and I'm a religious person, so I should go in for that." But here's the deal. Gregory Peck's character is not religious.
Yeah. That's true.
They make a point because there's a point later on where the priest is like, "You need to get baptized, and you need to take communion because it's the only chance you have for saving your soul." Because your son, who's not really your son,
Yeah.
is actually the devil. Well,
Yeah.
the Antichrist, which is not the same thing according to it's oof.
Sure. Um.
Anyways,
Let's break this down. Let's break this down. First, were you scared by this movie?
several times,
Yeah.
but not okay. Yes, I wasn't scared for the first 10 minutes,
Okay.
and then that thing happened.
This movie has some of the most wonderful, and by wonderful, I mean most inventive, deaths of any horror movie, and it is not a super gory horror movie, which I
Nope.
appreciate.
Yes.
The do you wanna say what that event is?
I will say that there is a person who says it's all for you, Damien, and then what happens next, including the person saying it's all for you, Damien.
Yeah.
I.
It's something. Honestly, Phil, it's something you can't unsee. It is
Yeah,
that scary.
it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
You like the lightning storm scene with the flying lightning rod, the scene in the graveyard with the mastiffs with the dogs.
yes.
Just
It doesn't.
it's
You know who directed this? You know who directed this movie, right?
Richard Donner.
Been seeing a lot of Richard Donner movies lately.
Indeed, we have. Indeed, we have.
So
Also directed, for those who don't know, also directed the Lethal Weapon movies. He also directed the first two Superman movies.
he directed one and a half of Superman. Superman 2 was
Right,
directed
right.
by
No,
Richard
that's true.
West.
That's true. 1.5. That's fair.
Richard Lester directed Superman 2, finished it up for him, and he directed Maverick.
Yes.
He directed Scrooged.
I did not know that, or had
Although
forgotten
our
one
friend
of the
Jeremy
two.
told me that my friend Jeremy told me that our friend Jeremy told me that there was a lot of issues there with between him and Bill Murray, and that apparently, I don't know, Richard Donner didn't end up directing all of it or something. I don't know. I'm
Interesting.
not gonna.
Okay.
But anyways, that we're getting away from the Omen.
Yeah.
I was scared for much of
Yeah.
it, and more importantly, I just felt awful.
It is a movie. It is a movie. You sort of have to be Andy Dufresne. You have to to get to the catharsis. You have to go through a river of stuff and come out clean on the other side.
But there's no catharsis. There's no.
It's true, and I want to talk about that because a bunch of horror movies, and this is a great example, and a movie that we've talked about scaring the pants off of both of us before. Rosemary's Baby. There's no catharsis at the end. It ends not as bad as it could, but on the road to very bad things.
Yeah.
And so if you look at I'm going to get really, really geeky for a second. If you look at the origins of theater and how it was used to produce a catharsis and like a release of emotion after which you were in some sense purified, it kind of makes no sense, right? It makes no sense that there would be a movie that was designed to leave you in a not like a realistic drama where the point is, you know what, sometimes life actually sucks and I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to hold up a mirror. This is something that presumably would not happen. And let me put it this way. I fervently hope. This is something that would not happen, and yet there is no catharsis at the end. There is no way. There's no way for you to release that emotion and become, in that sense, purified. And I want to talk about that for a second. What do you think about that? I have my own thoughts, but what do you think about that?
I mean, about what you just said?
Yeah.
It makes sense. There's no hope. I feel good about the fact that the scriptural backing for this movie is flimsy. It makes me feel better about my life. They filmed originally, the idea was that he kills the boy.
Yes. Yes.
And they basically said, no, we can't have you killing a kid on we just can't do that. But it's like, what you've done is basically allowed the Antichrist to live. And I'm not okay with that. Because they do an interesting thing where Donner says he wanted to create it in such a way where nothing happens that's so magical that you cannot categorize it all as basically a family's descent into madness.
Sure.
But no, because people get possessed, and a kid's got a birthmark that says 666 on his forehead, on his head. Like, I'm sorry, no. Yeah. So, I don't know. I get that idea though. The idea of that, like, if you didn't know all of the details and you just saw what happened to them, a lot of it could be explained away. But when you see what we saw, you're like, okay, kids born from a jackal, we're in trouble. Not good.
Sure.
His mom's a jackal.
What'd you say?
His mom's a jackal.
Yes.
That's not good.
No. You're probably going to end up.
And the priests who gave the boy to the parents were actually part of the cult.
Yes.
Ushering it. When I figured, like, it took me a while to figure that out. It's a smarter movie than I gave it credit for at first. When I really thought it through, it's a smart movie. Yes. It's a horror movie that makes you think, because I had to go, wait a minute. Then those priests, the priests were evil priests.
Yes.
Not my favorite kind of priest.
Yes. Yes, it's true. Not the kind that you want officiating a wedding, for example.
Satanists freak me the hell out.
Okay. No pun intended.
Pun accepted, but not intended.
Fair. I want to stay on this idea of sort of the absence of catharsis for a minute because what I think is so interesting, and honestly, movies like The Omen, movies like Rosemary's Baby, these were the things that attracted me to the horror genre in the first place. And it isn't because they end sad, although the idea, like when you first see that first movie that you see as a kid that ends not happy, you're like, whoa, you can do that? And it's just something like, yes, you're sad because you're a kid, but if you're old enough, you sort of realize like, whoa, you can do more things with this art form, with this medium than I previously thought.
Still,
And
personally,
and
not fully okay with that.
say again, you're not fully
I'm
okay with
still
that?
not totally okay with it. I mean, you're right. Everything you said is accurate, but it still bothers me when it happens.
And that's totally fair. Of course, that's totally fair. So what I think, and this is me just thinking out loud, but I find it interesting that they are designed, these movies. I'm not talking about horror movies in general because some are just you've got torture porn, you've got movies that end happy, you've got movies that don't end happy but have sort of a complete arc and there is a catharsis even though it's a sad ending, for example.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but movies like this and like Rosemary's Baby, and like maybe even like The Thing, because that there's no real catharsis at the end of that movie.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I'm talking about the remake of the original, not the remake of the remake, the one starring Keith David and Kurt Russell. Um, the there is this aspect to them that instead of like the wave crests and it crashes and that crashing and the aftermath is your catharsis, it leaves you in that step of heightened reality.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be supernatural to do that.
Right.
But I find that fascinating, and I wonder if, and I'm probably giving the genre too much credit here, but I wonder if sort of at the base of every horror movie, or at least every smart horror movie, there is the aspect of, we're not going to take you the full distance because the scariest thing is the thing that we leave you with. And that thing that we leave you with is your imagination telling you the next step.
Right.
You know,
You didn't.
what does Rosemary's...
didn't beat this thing. You didn't beat this thing.
Yes.
Like, you didn't beat this thing.
Yes.
The scariest part is that you don't get for it to end happily. You
Right.
don't get that.
Yeah.
That it's not just, balance is supposed to be restored on some level.
Yes.
And this is saying, or not.
Yes. Yes.
And that's like the whole idea of The Walking Dead or any zombie movie is balance being restored, or Walking Dead specifically is them showing how balance gets restored. Like,
Sure.
Sure. Or World War Z, the book. Not even going to discuss the fact that there's a fake movie coming out, but the book is after it's ended. So there is a balance of some sort in the sense that by the virtue of the fact that you read it, by virtue of the fact that you're reading it, it implies that it's been survived.
Yes, that's true.
But with The Omen, it's the you see the boy at the end, you see Damien at the end, and you go, oh, the worst is yet to come.
Yes, and the only I want to take one exception to something that you've said, but it's only to agree with your larger point even more. The Walking Dead, what I think The Walking Dead is about is, it's not a return to an equilibrium. It's sort of a finding the new level of equilibrium.
No, sure. But I mean, for us, as the viewer, it's the return to equilibrium.
Agreed. But with things like The Omen, there is literally no way to watch that movie and end it with any hope, even if it's not a hope of immediately bad things happening. There is no way to watch it and have any hope of equilibrium being restored anytime soon. You are unmoored. You have lost your anchor, and you are adrift, and whatever happens, you have to deal with. And you have to deal with it from that heightened state, that has a Greek name that I have totally forgotten. That is the state before catharsis, and
If you've forgotten it, then you've forgotten more than I ever knew. So well done.
fair, perhaps fair. Um, you that is what that's what I was trying to say earlier is the scariest thing. Like that last step for people to take. Like I need to restore equilibrium and I know the step to take. Well, if there is no hope of equilibrium, what is the next step that you take? What is it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it is scarier than a movie that ends with everyone dead.
Yeah.
And it is scarier than, for example, Dawn of the Dead, which ends with 2 of our main 4 characters dead and the other 2 flying away in a helicopter with not a lot of fuel. Because
Right.
at least you know some of the things that could happen next. But with
Yep.
the Omen, you literally know nothing.
Yep.
And that is and I guess, you know, at the end of a comedy, often you do, but you don't necessarily laugh more after a comedy is over. And with a romance, you don't necessarily experience that love more. But with a well-made horror movie, it is not out of the ordinary at all for you to become more and more scared the more you think about it, even after the movie has ended.
I know I hear what you're saying with horror, and I think you're right, but not at the expense of comedy, because you, for instance, will quote lines that we quote Ferris Bueller's Day Off all the time to each other, but haven't seen it in a really long time. But
That's
haven't seen
true.
it in a really long time. So I think actually comedy, or for instance, as much as I love The Big Lebowski, it became it. I love other Coen Brothers movies more, but I quote Lebowski with other people so much that it's almost like it's heightened in its ability to become funny. Or Anchorman, for instance.
Yes,
Um,
my response to that is twofold. One, there is evidence to support the fact that laughter actually came out of a fear response. So because it's a reaction to the unexpected. So perhaps they're sort of more closely related than you might think. The other thing
okay.
is though, quoting lines, you're absolutely, of course you're right, but I think there's a difference in quoting lines and it getting funnier as you quote lines, as opposed to I'm just gonna think about it,
Sure. I hear what you're saying.
and it
I hear what you're
grows.
saying.
The horror
Horror.
grows.
Sure. I have to think about that. This is going to be a continuing conversation because
Me
it's
too.
the
I don't know
smartest.
that I believe
It's
what I
way
just
too
told
smart. Your analysis is way too smart, and I don't know how to deal with it.
you.
So I have to think about it.
I don't know that I believe what I just told you, but again, thinking out loud, that sort of in the moment that makes sense to me.
Can I talk about some problems I had with the movie?
Please do.
These are the 2 worst parents I have ever seen in a movie.
Ever.
Okay, first of all, aside from the fact that you don't tell your wife that it's not really your kid, just please. There's a scene in the first 5 minutes where the husband and wife are walking along this riverbank,
Mm-hmm.
just having a conversation. And in my mind, I was like, oh, there's the 2 of them walking along, husband and wife. And then all of a sudden, the wife goes, wait, where's Damien? And it turns out that they had forgotten that they were walking with their child.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, oh, he must be like 9 or 10, which is stupid of you. And then like they run back to find him, and it's more than like a couple feet. And Damien's like 2 or 3. Right? Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's just like, fine, everything's fine. They're walking by a river. Even if it's a
Yes.
stream, it's a fast-moving stream that your kid could get swept away in.
Indeed.
Find his toy, and he's not near his toy, and then they find him by himself over by a tree, just like, I'm fine. But, like, I have a 2-year-old. I'm not going to walk near a river with her not holding her hand. Right. They were having a long adult conversation to the degree that I didn't even know the kid was in the scene.
Yes.
I thought it was just the 2 of them walking.
Yes.
Terrible parents.
Terrible parents. Totally agree.
Literally, the nanny shows up. They have no credentials and no anything, and they're just like, where'd you come from? I didn't call the nanny. Did you call? I didn't know. And then she's like, oh, you can check my references. And they're like, oh no, never mind. It's fine.
Yeah, no, totally.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Right.
And then he just goes off to Rome. Like he just goes off to Rome with a photographer,
Yes.
and the wife is in the hospital.
Yes.
And he doesn't trust the governess, but he leaves Damien with her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a dog in this house. Well, Damien, and then the governess is like, well, Damien wants the dog, and he's like, okay. Well,
Right.
So Damien's 7. Who gives a crap what he wants? Like, I have a kid, and I'm telling you. Oh, he wants a Rottweiler we can't afford in just to have? Okay, that's fine. Never mind. I don't know what my problem was. Really? Really, you don't know? I'm just telling you. It's kind of like that strains the credulity of the movie for me.
Fair.
Though a lot of people don't know that it's not the Book of Revelations. It's the Book of Revelation, singular. Because it's actually the revelation to John. Or the apocalypse of John, because the word revelation comes from the Latin revelare, which in Greek is apocalypto, revelation, reveal. It is one singular revelation. It's not the Revelations. It's not Revelations. It's not the Book of Revelations. It's just Revelation. Okay? Or the Book of Revelation. Okay. Fascinating to you. Not fascinating to a priest who should know better. So when the priest in the movie says Revelations, I'm like, no, you've been to seminary.
No.
And you should. That was really stupid. There's also a point when they talk about taking him to a church service, and they said it's just an Episcopalian wedding. Well, they're in England. There's no Episcopal church in England.
It's Anglican, right?
Yeah. It's just a wedding in a church.
To be fair, and this is totally.
She's American.
I mean, they are American, you know.
That's the best. Yeah, but still, it was very like, come on.
Agreed. No.
Those were my quibbles as a religious person.
It's not an airtight movie. It is not an airtight movie, but
a lot of crazy things happened to them while they were making this film.
Yes.
Gregory Peck's flight was struck by lightning, as was the screenwriters when he was flying to England. One of the stunt guys was on another movie right after making this, and he got injured and his wife got killed, decapitated. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. It's not good.
No.
I don't like things about the devil, so I'm not excited for whatever comes next, because I'm sure it's about the devil. I think you're going to make me watch The Exorcist next, is that right?
No. The Exorcist will come. Will come, but are you ready? What else do you want to say about The Omen? Because otherwise I'll talk about what's coming next for you.
I really don't like things about the devil. And it's a big problem I have with a lot of horror films, because I just don't like it. It freaks me out.
Fair enough.
And it freaks me out, unlike Freddy, because like there is no Freddy Krueger, but there's a devil.
Right.
So that's problematic for me. It's like,
sure.
That's where it freaks me out. I'm like, Anyways, I want to say also about it, their understanding of the Book of Revelation was not great, but that's fine. It's weird to me that a guy was like, and there was like a religious advisor on the movie. I was like, like who was ordained minister of some kind. But there is, what I do like about it is, the funny thing about these movies is, on one level it's exploitative, because it's exploiting our fears of something really deeply scary. Mm-hmm. Because even if you don't believe in the devil, the idea of the ultimate evil is a scary thing.
And so it's something that you can relate to on some level, even if you don't believe in Satan.
Right. And when I read a review, or I read an article, I read some stuff about it, and the screenwriter, it was like, why did you make this movie? And why did you write this movie? And he was like, for the money. And so I'm like, oh, no big deal. Just exploiting people's deepest fear for the money. I don't really care about any of this nonsense. Sure. That's a little frustrating. But on the other hand, one thing that I do like about these movies is they to enter into that world, they acknowledge the power of evil, and also oftentimes the converse of that, the power of good. Like
Sure.
they actually not they to enter into that world. They enter into this world where they're like, oh, a lot of people don't believe in this, but actually there is this power here, and that's interesting to me. That's an interesting idea to me. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. It does make
Okay,
sense.
okay, that's what I want to say about that.
Coming next for you.
Oh boy.
Not we'll get back to the devil at some point.
Oh
I have no
gosh.
doubt.
Okay. Okay.
Coming next for you, the movie Wreck.
Oh, you so and so, you dirty son of a son.
If you know me personally, or if you have watched a lot of our early
Uh,
podcasts, you heard me talk about this movie Wreck, as in the button record, or because it's a Spanish horror movie, recordar. Um, it's the button on a camcorder, on a camera. It is flat. It is truly one of the most terrifying movies I have ever seen in my life. Um, it was so scary that I saw the inferior American remake the day before, and I was still, and it's almost a shot-for-shot remake, it still scared me senseless. It scares me, and I have probably seen it 5 or 6 times now. I will do two things for you. One, you are not allowed to watch it at night. Not
okay.
allowed.
Okay.
And for those who think I'm kidding, I'm not. I'm actually trying to protect Phil here. You're not allowed to watch it at night.
Sure.
If you watch it with someone else,
Okay.
you're not allowed to talk during the movie.
Oh, okay.
You have to but I mean you're going to want to turn and talk to the person because it breaks the tension. You're not allowed to.
Probably
But
gonna watch it by myself.
but if you watch it by yourself, do it at a point where when you end the movie, you immediately are scheduled to see other people within like an hour.
Okay. I can do all of these things.
Yes. And in return, I will go ahead and I will tell you the movie I'm going to give you after that. And it's a little bit of a respite. It is the horror comedy American Werewolf in London.
Okay. See, I'm
So,
already excited about that. Thank you.
yes. Yes. So that's those are the two things coming up for you.
Oh boy.
I will try. Let me know when you're watching them because I will try to rewatch them. I was not able to watch the Omen again
Okay.
before this convo, but I will, and I may not be able to for the ones coming up, but I will do my best to rewatch them before we talk about them. But that's your homework.
Can I say one other thing about The Omen?
Yes,
Lee Remick is just gorgeous.
indeed.
Lee
So
Remick
good.
is one of the most is just a classic beauty.
Agreed.
Just a classic beauty. I'd put her up
Yes,
against Grace Kelly. Grace Kelly might win the argument, but Lee Remick would make it interesting.
I agree. I agree.
That's all I'm gonna say.
She is totally.
And I
She
and I
is.
and I recognize, by the way, I want to say this because now I'm going to get all feministy again. Like I recognize that that is not the sole distinction of a female in a film, but her character is so useless, and it's not her fault. I think Lee Remick is actually a phenomenal actress. I mean,
Me
she is
too.
just great in Anatomy of a Murder, and I
Oh,
mean, she is a
yes.
special actor, no
Yes.
question.
Yes.
But in this movie, pretty much she just looks gorgeous,
Yeah.
and then
That's pretty much her job.
and then dies brutally.
Yes.
So there you
That's
go.
true. And with that, we will bid you a fond farewell. This has been another Second Breakfast. I'm Andy Roth, and that's Phil Duvall. We'll see you again real soon. Bye bye.
Bye now.